Hi guys, and welcome to Rathwulven Bushcraft. Thanks a lot for tuning in. This video actually is an addition or an addendum to a video I shot about 8 months ago. And maybe some of you still do remember the complete guide to tick prevention. And if you haven't seen the video or if you forgot about the content, do me a favor, just open this video right now via this information link up there and pause this video. Because first, you need to know what happened in the first video so you do understand the context of this one. Once you watch this, just come back here and then we can continue, right? So, assuming that you watched the other video, or you still do remember what happened there and what I was talking about, well, this was all basic information and I was trying to compose a video that's comprehensive, that's all-encompassing. And it just turned out through time that people still had a couple of questions. And I just want to address these today and just give you a little more information on the topic, because most of you told me that they find this topic very interesting, and so do I. I find ticks to be very interesting organisms, even though I don't want to get bitten, right? But nevertheless, they're fascinating by means of biology, by means of how they engage with the world and like how they do conduct themselves out in nature. They're very unique. So yeah, first question was a pretty simple one. Why don't you film ticks and why are you just talking? Well, as you've seen in the intro scene of this video, here's a bit of footage. And I know that, you know, it's kind of hard to film ticks because they're so small, and it's really hard to get kind of like a nice cinematographic type of footage, you know, that looks nice on camera. But I hope that you could see a little bit about the habitat right now. You could see, yeah, where ticks are living, how they attach themselves to leaves. If you saw that on camera, then you did see that they use the 3 pairs of legs, the back pairs, just to wrap around a leaf like so, right? And then they just stretch out their front pair of legs and wait for their host. And this is when they use this hollow organ I was talking about to then basically, you know, get brushed off. For example, if I'm passing by, then they just get brushed off by my leg. They attach to that, just start crawling, and then they look for a spot where they can bite or actually sting, because yeah, technically it's stinging, but we just call it bite, okay? So yeah, what do we learn from that footage? Well, I was in this forest right over there, and that's maybe just like 100 meters across, not even, maybe like 80 meters. And I found 16 full-grown female ticks on leaves while just walking through that path right there. And that already gives you an, kind of like an impression of yeah, how this entire tick situation is here. Like, we do have a ton of ticks in this area, really, really many. And yeah, what you could also see is that the habitat is exactly as described. You know, you got those patches of grass, patches of ferns, all those tiny little straws, you know, just like if I take these here, for example. Perfect tick territory. What also adds to that is that here we do have a lot of agricultural landscape. Like, everything here is kind of a clearing that is used for cultivating cattle. And over there we do have a horse ranch. Over there there's also a ranch. And this kind of like adds to this entire problem that we do have with ticks right here in this area. And yeah, well, let's just talk about ticks a little more, because people were asking things like, yeah, can you kill ticks by freezing your clothing or by frost? And no, you can't. That's the simple answer. And there's this common misconception that if you go home, you know, you just take off your clothing and just put that into the freezer, like you would do, for example, with your dog's blanket if the dog has fleas. But it doesn't work for ticks. You could kill fleas, yeah. They relatively easily die, you know, if you put them into the freezer and just let the temperatures drop. But ticks don't, because as we discussed, ticks are actually in a 2-year life cycle, and that means that they can survive temperatures up to minus 20 degrees Celsius. That's about minus 4 Fahrenheit, if I'm correct, but please look that up, I'm not quite sure about that. It's really important to realize the robustness, the unaffectable nature, so to speak, of ticks. You can barely destroy them. They're really, really sturdy. They are persistent. They really manage to survive in really extreme weather conditions. Like the last 5 days were days with temperatures between 37 to 41 degrees Celsius. So in Fahrenheit that should be about 105 degrees or 110 even. And even then, they're still out there, they're still waiting for prey. And yeah, you can get this kind of idea, right? That ticks are very, very robust organisms that, you know, can be expected anywhere. And as you just saw, I also filmed 2 specimens. If you're really talking about 16 to 20 ticks, just like on a tiny area like this, you increase the risk of them being vectors for certain types of diseases, because maybe the first 10 are not, but then the next one might be, right? So I hope this gives you kind of like an idea about the importance of this topic, right? I also had a couple of debates lately with people that were just like, oh, yeah, I get like 30 tick bites a year and I never got sick. Yeah, maybe you did not, you know, then you're really lucky. But I think, you know, that like the more we go outdoors, you know, and the more we engage also in areas like this, which funnily enough also is an area for borreliosis and also for the meningoencephalitis. Like this is a risk area. This has been declared so by the state. Yeah, like those are things, you know, we really need to start thinking about, right? And yeah, maybe I should just start off with one question that also really got stuck with me, and that was from the scrawny lumberjack. So if you're watching this video, greetings over there, and thanks for your comment underneath the other video, because you really set me a thinking. The scrawny lumberjack posted a comment stating that he was eating a lot of garlic in a period of time, and that this did not have any effect on mosquito bites, for example, but that he noticed a different behavior in ticks. So he drew this conclusion that if he eats a lot of garlic, ticks do behave differently. And what he explained was the following. He looked down his leg, saw 3 ticks crawling on his lower leg right here, but they did not bite. So he reasoned that the ticks not biting him must have some correlation with eating the garlic for this week. And what can I say about this? Well, I don't think that there's any correlation, not to speak of a causation, a causality. And let me explain to you why. First of all, again, as we saw right there, if you brush off a tick and it just crawls across your trousers, for example, or even up your shirt and needs to find some kind of entry point, right, to get to your skin, could have been possible that you brushed off these ticks some 20 minutes ago, some hour ago, you know, and that they were just looking for a spot and just right at that moment managed to get to your skin. Maybe because there was a fold in your sock or so and they just managed to sneak through. I don't know the circumstance. Then again, you know, it could also be that you had just like short pants like I have right now. You just brushed them off and you just noticed them about a minute later or 10 minutes later. Maybe even 30 minutes later. Doesn't really matter, because ticks are looking for an ideal spot to attach themselves to. We discussed these in the other video. But it's really important to understand that just because they're crawling on your skin doesn't mean that they're not going to bite. Again, they need to find a proper spot to attach themselves to, where the skin layer is thin enough so they can get to a blood vessel and then attach themselves to that. So, now back to your theory, you know, that you say, okay, I ate a lot of garlic and I saw that they weren't biting me. I don't see any correlation there, and I certainly don't see any kind of causality in this. So basically eating garlic means less tick bites, or eating garlic means ticks won't bite. It's a hypothesis, but it has never been verified, and there's been scientific research on that. Laboratories have experimented with garlic, with lavender, with lemon juice, you know, so you got some kind of acidic component in potential remedies or potential repellents against ticks. And what they found was that there is no single correlation between less tick bites and the ingredients of garlic. Yeah, you do smell differently. It's also measurable that you transpire kind of like a different odor, but this also brings us back to the first video. Ticks don't smell like we do. They don't have a nose. It's not that they walk around like and then they realize, okay, there's a human being, let's just go over there and bite that human being. It's just not true. You know, what they do is just sense all the chemicals in the air that you're transpiring. For example, if I would pass by, let's say, that leaf, and I exhale, that have a cloud of carbon dioxide forming, right? So basically there's a higher concentration of carbon dioxide, and even if it disperses like so, right, we still do have an increased concentration right there. And this is what ticks can feel in their environment with this halo organ that we discussed. And you might just also picture this with your own skin. Imagine that out of every pore there's tiny molecules that are evaporated, you know, just like picture them as tiny little marbles and they just fly off. Then you would have like this cloud of molecules or marbles around your body, right? And this is just what they can sense. And this is why they basically then also put up their tarsus, like as you also maybe saw in the video, or what you couldn't see also if you just look for pictures online, that they're getting ready for you to brush them off. And then they just hold on, cling to you, start crawling, and then they try to find some point where they can sting you, where they can bite you. So I'm really sorry to say this, but I don't think that your theory or your idea is valid here. There's no scientific proof for that, at least. Nothing wrong with eating garlic though. Garlic is wonderful. I also like to cook with garlic, so if you like garlic, just eat as much as you want, perfectly fine. But yeah, take that with a grain of salt, right? And that also brings us to another question, because people were addressing this topic around black cumin seeds. And black cumin seeds are kind of like praised as some sort of super grain or super seed that also prevents insect bites. And let me be really clear from the very beginning, that's an urban legend. There is no correlation and also no causality that has been discovered by means of science. And we're talking about science here, right? We're talking about empirical facts, things that can be measured, things that can be tested and basically are a constant. So with 10 different experiments you should get 10 times the same result, right? And that's the thing, like also with black cumin seeds. So for example, if you like to eat a spoon a day, like some people do, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a pretty healthy supplement for your diet, absolutely. But there's a problem that also evolves around this entire myth that it's a natural repellent to ticks. And let me just explain to you where this is coming from, because responsible for this entire myth is the finding of a boy called Alexander Betz from Germany. And just to give you a little bit of the background story, Alexander was participating in a campaign called Jugend forscht. That's translated as youth conduct science, or youth is investigating, literally. And what Jugend forscht does is basically enabling children and teenagers to conduct their own researches, you know, to bring in their ideas, to brainstorm, to innovate, and maybe find some kind of new interesting scientific revelation, right? So that in essence is a really cool thing. And what happened is that Alexander participated there because he experienced some issue with his dog. He always went out with the dog for walks, also through forests like these. Dog came home, you know, dog had ticks everywhere. If you're a dog owner, you probably know that. Then he had to remove those ticks all the time. And at a point, the dog got sick. Not from the ticks, but with a different disease. And the veterinarian prescribed a diet with black cumin seeds. And throughout the period that the dog was taking black cumin seeds 3 times a day, Alexander noticed that the dog had less ticks. At least in his subjective perception, he thought like, okay, why does the dog just have 2 ticks instead of 10? We just walk the same route, what's happening? And then he was just drawing this conclusion, like, he has a really intelligent mind if he does this at the age of 16, right? He really goes like, okay, what if this has to do with the black cumin seeds? The dog eats them, the dog has less ticks, maybe this helps to prevent tick bites. So he was subsidized by Jugend forscht then. They did a couple of experiments, and the actual findings of that very experiment was that you can assume a correlation, but it cannot be measured. There was no clear and no convincing argument that black cumin seeds result in less bites. So that this is like a constant throughout all the experiments that they conducted. And even worse, after that, there were also scientific approaches by laboratories in regards to black cumin seed, because they were intrigued by that theory of that boy. And they did researches, figured out no correlation and certainly no causality behind that. So it's not that black cumin seed inevitably leads to less tick bites and having ticks being repelled. There were experiments in which they put ticks into certain kind of test containers, like petri dishes, right? And one was actually basically sprayed with the black cumin seed, others were not, and there was nothing that kind of changed the behavior of the ticks. Again, also to that thing, if you want to eat black cumin seeds, please go ahead and do so. Again, it's a great supplement for your diet. But if we speak about science, unfortunately, for as much as Alexander tried to find some kind of new scientific insight there is no clear conclusion. And nevertheless, you know, lifestyle blocks and homeopathic blocks and yeah, kind of media that are dealing with alternative medicine and these things just picked that up, thought like, okay, Alexander goes to Jugendforscht, so Jugendforscht is about science, so that's science, so it's clear that this boy is right with his hypothesis, and it's a fact, you know, and that's the fallacy behind it. And hypothesis needs to be verified. If it's not verified, it still stays a hypothesis, no matter how amazing that thought process of that boy was. So I hope that gives you kind of like an insight also into this matter, because also in the bushcraft community, so many people swear that black cumin seeds kind of protect them from tick bites ever since. But there's also a lot of stories that are like telling the exact opposite. There's people that are using black cumin seeds for quite a while, and then they just happen to be in the wrong kind of area, like back there, and then they come home and they have 4 or 5 ticks that they need to remove from their body. So yeah, also take that with a grain of salt, and I hope this also kind of like explains a bit about the context of certain assumptions that we have in regards to this topic of ticks and them being parasites, biting people and so on, right? So yeah, I hope you found that interesting. Then maybe one more thing, people were also asking about the mouthpieces, because there were a couple of people that said like, yeah, but my grandma always told me to unscrew them, you know, to get them out. And I mentioned before that ticks don't have a screw, like they don't wind into your body like as if you would put in like a metal screw, right? And maybe I should explain this a little more in detail, because people asked for yeah, that information. How do the mouthpieces of the tick look like? Okay, now we have to do kind of like a tiny little experiment. Give me a second. I'm just gonna take the sheath. Imagine this is kind of like the snout, kind of like the, yeah, how do you say, like the biting instrument of the tick with which it just attaches to your body like that. That looks like that, right? And it has this one in the middle, and then it's covered by 2 kind of like mouthpieces that serve like a shell, but also for digging. So it looks like this. Right? And what these 2 pieces do, they have hooks on the side, just like so. And now picture that this tick is on your skin, that it needs to kind of like dig into your flesh, into your skin, to get to a blood vessel. And what it does is kind of like doing this movement, see? It's kind of like scratching open your skin on a very, very tiny level. Then it's also administering some sort of saliva and kind of chemical compound that is working against the rash of your skin. It's kind of like almost like a painkiller, like a tranquilizer, so you don't feel the actual digging into the skin. And again, this happens on a really tiny level because ticks are just that small. And once it has gone to the 2nd layer of your skin, I think, or the 3rd, I'm not quite sure, I would have to look that up, they would just open up those 2 flappy things on the mouth, right? Expose the kind of trunk, you know, kind of like the straw that they suck with, and that one is covered in barbs, and that just then attaches to that tiny wound that has been created, and then it starts sucking it out like so, right? And the problem is that those barbs go in every direction, so they would go up front, to the sides and to the back, so you kind of like have a ton of fishing hooks on that snout, right? And now picture turning that. If that looks kind of like a mace from medieval times, you know, like a morning star with a lot of spikes that do have barbs. Try turning that. What do you think happens? This here. Of course without the falling off, but then it would stay attached to your body like that. And this is what kind of increases the risk of any type of infection, because you don't know what kind of bacteria are there. You still get a wound which has, like a strange tissue, alien tissue inside your skin. And that's the issue. Basically, this is where the infections come from, right? Also really important maybe to mention this, because people said, like, how am I going to pick it right then? If you pull it and you squeeze it with tweezers, you also need to make sure that you always use the tips of the tweezers to get as close to the head as you can, and never squeeze the back part of the tick, because we talked about the Ixodidae, the hard ticks, that do have kind of like this protective shield on the back, and you can see this like with the black circle, and then the red brownish circle comes out. The red brownish part is just their back that is soft, and you should never squeeze that, because if you do so, you will let the tick vomit into the wound. Hence, you will get all the contaminants and the pathogens into the wound, and you have the risk of getting infected. What you always should do is like try to get as close to your skin as you possibly can, and try, like if the tick is up there like this, right? Try to pinch it here, and not like so. Not here, see? But go all the way down, and always make sure you only press the part with that kind of black protective shield made of chitin. That's the material that bugs are made from, right? Because then you're safe, and you can just pull it out. Then it will automatically at some point just release, you know, the bite, and then just will be pulled out, and you will have like bigger chances to just pull out the entire tick rather than just twisting of body parts of the tick and such. It's a stupid idea. Never do the twisting. I'm just thinking if there's something more to add. Well, maybe one more thought about not panicking. Let's assume we have 100 ticks in that area, and 10% are vectors of diseases like borreliosis. That means that we have 10 ticks in there that do carry the disease, right? By means of mathematics. If one of these ticks bites you with this 10% chance, you know, could also be the 90% chance that this tick is not even infested. But let's assume you get bitten by one of those 10%. Then you also got your own immune system. If you get a good immune system, this might also combat the infection even before it just spreads all in your body, you know, and just establishes itself in your organism. There's maybe something to add too, and I didn't do so because, like a couple of people were also asking, okay, should I be panicking right now? Should I be afraid? Well, no, because you can do a lot of things. Like first, you got the actual quota or the actual statistics working for you in terms of infested ticks. Not all ticks are vectors of diseases. That's the good news. The second good news is if you remove them on time, you might not even get any kind of contaminants or pathogens into your body. So the sooner you realize that you have been bitten, and the sooner you can remove it, right, the better, you know, your chances are to not get any kind of disease from that. So just do regular checkups, as I said in the other video. Then, if you should be unlucky, you know, and you get Borrelia, in this particular case Borrelia burgdorferi, those are the ones that are mainly responsible for Lyme. There's also 2 different other varieties which are not that important now. You can do that research yourself if you're interested. But yeah, you got this bacteria in your body now, then your immune system is reacting. While combating those bacteria, your immune system might win. So nothing happened. That's the third good news in that thing. And then you still have all the possibilities in regards to going to your doctor, to running checks, you know, and getting antibiotic treatment if you should be so unlucky that you get Borrelia and might develop some sort of disease that then turns into Lyme. And then you basically already got 4 steps, you know, that ticks need to pass in order to do something to you. So that's also a different perspective on the entire matter, because it can really ruin your trip if you just go out and you maybe get this impression also from my last video or from the things you read online, that there's those tiny monsters everywhere and that they're just, you know, waiting for you to mess up your life. Yeah, the thing is, they can. Lyme disease ain't fun. FSME, the meningoencephalitis, will be deadly unless you have a vaccination. Those are things to take into consideration, just like other kind of diseases that might come over with non-native versions of ticks, to which I will get in a second, like Q fever, or what was it, the Californian tick fever, or the Colorado tick fever, I think it was called. Like, there's so many things. But then again, also those contaminants first need to get into your body, then they need to win the fight against your immune system. So it's not that black and white, you know, that if you go into the forest you have to be fearful because there's ticks and oh my god, we're all gonna die from Lyme disease. So try to have a balanced view there, like with any other thing in life. Just be differentiating, accept the science behind it though, and yeah, nevertheless just reassure yourself that it's not as bad as it sounds. Just be cautious, you know, don't be panicking. Fear and caution are two different things. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, and then one final thing to tropical ticks. Funnily enough, I did not hope that this would happen, but now it happened. They spotted the first Hyalomma marginatum tick in our area, and that's just about like 7 to 12 kilometers down that direction. Like I walked about 7 kilometers from there, and it was like 20 kilometers approximately from my hometown. So if you just go down that direction, there they spotted the first Hyalomma. And I'm going to put you a link into the video description with a video that shows the speed and the look of that tick, because it's also called the giant tropical tick or the monster tick, like some kind of tabloids are calling it. And what is that type of tick? Well, it has been flown in by hosts, by birds that came from kind of Asian areas with different climates. And what happened is that this tick is now marching further up north because we're dealing with climate change, right? Nobody can deny that we are now undergoing severe changes of the climate. I mean, there's a scientific consensus yet again, other than, for example, with your black cumin seeds or with your garlic. So yeah, what basically happens is those ticks came into this area, and because the winters are more mild and because the period from early spring to late autumn is a little extended, they can go through more life cycles. Just take the life cycle from one of those Ixodidae scapularis, from the deer tick that we just looked at. It happens now that our native ticks are already going through an entire life cycle within 1 year, if the conditions are right. This year is going to be such a year because we have an incredible amount of heat these days. We're going to have a long autumn, at least from the prognosis and from what the meteorologists think. And what that means is that they reach the adulthood even before winter comes. So they are reproducing even before the year that they're actually supposed to reproduce. So basically, instead of 1 extra generation per year, you get 2 extra generations. Makes sense, right? And the same also accounts for Hyalomma, for this monster tick that is about that size. It has about like 2.5 centimeters, and these very distinct white and red type of legs. They're striped red and white. And that tick is something really remarkable because it's one of the few ticks that actually go on an active hunt. You have to let that sink in. It's so fast that it's actively hunting for its prey. For example, over there, there's a couple of cows, you know. They could just basically run over there and then just attach themselves to their hosts. And now comes the crazy thing. If you want to look at the video in the video description below and just have a look at the tick and how fast it is, these are now also bringing new diseases. So we're talking about Q fever, for example. Something that we as Western Europeans are not really taking care of. Like, we're not getting vaccinations for that because we don't think it's a native thing, right? It's not native to our environment where we were born in, where we live. But it will become an issue soon because those ticks all start reproducing. Like last year, they found the first one in southern Germany. This year they found the first one here in the north of the Netherlands, close to the coastal area, almost close to the UK. And I heard from people from the UK that also in the UK, this specimen, specific type of tick has been found. There were specimens found of that variety of ticks. And it should be alerting us, because this is just one of the myriad things that are going to change to the worse for us humans if we talk about climate change. And what can we also say about this? Like, if we think about this on a broader spectrum, right, then we can only prevent these kind of exchange of species and the exchange of diseases and all these things if we really start working on maintaining the climate as it is right now. That means less cars, less airplanes, less vacation flights to I don't know wherever, less emissions from factories, from the industry. All these kind of things play a role. So we all need to work together. This is just something that I also want to add in this video, even though it's not particularly relating to ticks as such, but we already do have a problem with a very exotic ectoparasite that was not native to this area, and actually also just realized this, existed in Switzerland since 1975, but never spread outside of this very confined area in which they found specimen. And now all of a sudden, within 2 years, they are basically all across Europe. And now we talk about single specimen, right? But now they could reproduce. Ticks lay a couple of thousands of eggs, you know. If they hatch, then they spread in a certain tiny area. Then they attach to hosts. Those hosts become vectors and just carry them to other areas again. And maybe for now, it doesn't really influence us a lot. But if we think about the effects that we might see in 5 years, it's something that we need to be concerned with, especially as bushcrafters, because we spend so much time out here in the open and we have to rethink these things. So also for that, I'm going to give you a couple of links to studies just in the info box below. I'm also going to give you the contact address of Professor Dr. Ute Mackenstedt from the University of Hohenheim, I think, or Heidenheim. I'm not quite sure where she was working at, but I'm just going to give you the details. If you should find weird looking ticks that you don't identify and you just think like, hey, this could be this weird kind of specimen, keep them, catalog them and send them there. Because those scientists do researches. They are also doing researches on meningoencephalitis. For example, why it happens that right over there might be a field in which this virus exists, where right over there it doesn't. There are certain studies on that. I'm not going to go into details. If you want to do some research, just look for the work of Professor Mackenstedt, because she really did a lot of great work there. But yeah, just check all the information in the info box below. Just read this if you got a free minute, you know, a free day, or just, you know, if you're lying in the bathtub or just next to your campfire, and just educate yourself about that topic, right? And yeah, just to wrap it up, I hope that this gave you a little more context. I hope that all that rambling makes sense in your ears, because it's just like a spontaneous video that I'm shooting right now, just as an addendum to the prior video. And I hope that you get kind of like an idea of the bigger picture here, right? This is at least my intention. If you still got questions, again, just drop them in the comment section below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please also make sure to subscribe to the channel, because it helps the channel tremendously in regards to growing, of course. And yeah, I can only say stay safe. I hope you won't get any tick bites, and especially no serious diseases from that. And yeah, up until next time, I wish you a pleasant time outdoors. Have a great day, and see you next time. Bye bye.